Have you ever wondered what it means to be truly transformed? To be born again, but not physically, in your mind and your spirit. Well, today we're going to unlock a really powerful sermon from the Corpus Hermeticum, which is this amazing collection of ancient spiritual texts. We're going to explore a pretty profound dialogue between a master and his student, all about the ultimate mystery of rebirth.
So the entire conversation really boils down to this one central question. And it's a question that just echoes through the centuries, right? It's a quest not just for knowledge, but for a fundamental shift in consciousness, a totally new way of experiencing reality that goes way beyond our everyday senses.
At the heart of this whole thing are two main figures. First, you've got Tat. He's the eager student, and he pretty much represents all of us on that search for deeper meaning. And then you have his guide, Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary thrice greatest master. Now Hermes, he doesn't just hand out answers, he speaks in riddles, and he's always pushing Tat, and us, to actually experience the truth, not just hear about it.
So here's how it kicks off. The dialogue begins with Tat going up to Hermes, and he is just confused. He's heard Hermes talk about this whole rebirth thing before, how it's necessary for salvation, but it was all super mysterious. Now, he feels like he's ready, and he straight up asks for the teaching he was promised, the Sermon on Rebirth.
This quote from Tat just perfectly captures his confusion, doesn't it? He's still thinking in physical terms. He's asking about a literal womb and a seed. He's trying to cram this huge spiritual concept into a little material box, and that's really the first barrier he's got to overcome.
So how does Hermes respond? Well, not with the biology lesson, that's for sure. Instead, he answers with a series of really profound paradoxes. They're all designed to completely shift Tat's perspective away from the physical world and turn it toward the inner world of consciousness.
And Hermes's answer just redefines everything. As you can see here, the womb isn't a physical thing. It's wisdom that understands in silence. The seed is the true good, and the sower, that's the will of God. So he's immediately making it clear that this whole process is completely non-physical. It's an internal, divine operation.
And here it is, the central paradox. Hermes basically says he's already gone through this rebirth. He says, I am born in mind. He's trying to describe this new state he's in, but it's impossible to grasp with the five senses. He says it's a transformation that can't be taught like a math formula or seen with your eyes. And of course, this just makes Tat even more confused. So Tat is completely baffled at this point. So Hermes finally shifts gears from all the riddles to a more practical path. He explains that before you can be born into this new state, you first have to cleanse yourself of what he calls the brutish torments. These are the inner obstacles that keep us trapped in a material mindset.
And these are the 12 tormentors that imprison the soul. We're talking about things like ignorance, grief, greed, anger, and malice. Hermes describes them as literally creeping through the prison of the body and forcing us to suffer. So the very first step toward rebirth is to systematically drive these guys out.
Okay, and here's a really fascinating little detail from a translator's note that adds another layer to all this. It suggests that these 12 inner vices are actually directly connected to the 12 signs of the zodiac. This hints at a much deeper astrological connection in this whole process, linking our inner world to the cosmos itself. Pretty cool, huh?
So, what happens when you drive out these tormentors? Well, they don't just leave in empty space. Hermes explains that as the vices get kicked out, they are immediately replaced by their divine counterparts, which he calls the 10 powers of God. Let's take a look at how that works.
This slide really illustrates the core mechanic of the whole transformation. It's a direct, one-for-one replacement. Look at this. As a torment, like not knowing, is cast out, its opposite, the Gnosis of God, or divine knowledge, comes right in. Grief is replaced by joy. Greed is replaced by sharing with all. So the crucial point isn't about becoming empty, it's about becoming filled with something divine. So Hermes basically lays out a clear four-step path. First, you have to withdraw your attention from the outer world and go inward. Second, you have to will it to happen. This isn't passive. It requires a conscious choice. Third, you gotta do the work of purging those 12 tormentors. And finally, by doing all that, you open yourself up to receive God's mercy, which is what brings about the transformation. And then, all of a sudden, Tat gets it. The riddles, the steps, it all just clicks into place. And he bursts out with this absolutely ecstatic declaration. He doesn't see himself as a separate little person trapped in a body anymore. His consciousness has expanded to include everything. He realizes his true self isn't just
in the universe, it is the universe.
Hermes then clarifies that this is what's called an essential birth. See, the physical body we see is temporary, it's subject to death. But this new spiritual body, the one made up of the 10 divine powers, that's eternal. It is, as the text says, a body that death cannot touch.
But the teaching doesn't just stop there. I mean, after the transformation, how do you maintain this new state of consciousness? The sermon actually concludes with a practical tool, a secret hymn of praise-giving. Now, this hymn isn't just a song. It's a spiritual practice. It's for consciously reaffirming your connection to the divine, to the one and all. And the instructions are super specific. You perform it daily at sunrise facing east and at sunset facing south. That last detail is really fascinating. It's probably rooted in ancient Egyptian tradition, which viewed the West as the direction of death.
So, after exploring this 2,000-year-old guide to inner transformation, we're kind of left with a final thought. The text uses the language of its time, tormentors and powers, but these forces, these inner states, they're timeless. So the question for us today is, what are the tormentors in our own lives? And what are the powers we're trying to cultivate in their place?